Hello, everyone. We're just getting started here. Thanks, Irfan, for getting us all on stage. Hello and welcome. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the third and final event for the Arab Women and Feminist Visions for Equity and Belonging webinar series. The song we were just playing is called Aswat al-Jamahir by Maryam Hassan, which translates to the voices of the people. Maryam Hassan is a Sahrawi woman from Western Sahara and is known to be one of North Africa's greatest singers. She passed away in 2015, and she's known for singing protest songs on behalf of the Sahrawi people, using her voice to publicize and garner international attention for her people's struggle for independence. Again, welcome. My name is Basima Sizemore, and I'm a senior researcher at the Global Justice Program at the Othering and Belonging Institute at UC Berkeley, and I'm one of the co-designers for the Arab Women and Feminist Visions for Equity and Belonging webinar series. The webinar series is a project of the Global South Lab, a new area of work at the Othering and Belonging Institute, and it's our pleasure to have you join us today for the third and final event of the series. Today's webinar will focus on the critical role of Arab women and feminists in the struggle for sustainable development, climate justice, food justice, land rights, and sovereignty in the Arab region. The conversation will center on the vision, solutions, and aspirations of Arab women and feminists when it comes to advancing belonging and protecting land and life through climate resilience, sustainable food systems, and staying on ancestral lands and resistance to violence, land dispossession, and erasure. And we've been reading an acknowledgement at the start of each event, and I would like to take a moment to read that acknowledgement. In that, in designing this series, we've strived for a diverse representation of topics, struggles, geographies, identities, including ethnic and cultural identities, expertise, lived experiences, and histories as related to Arab women and feminists of the region and the diaspora. And we fully acknowledge that this series barely scratches the surface of the many topics and peoples that can and should be centered in these conversations. We acknowledge that there are many people and communities and issues to include and conversations to be had, including the collective identity of the region and its diverse population. Each session was designed to provide a small window or glimpse into the immense diversity of Arabs, Arabic-speaking peoples, and ethnic groups of the region that create the rich cultures, identities, histories, social and political fabric of the 22 Arab countries that span from East and North Africa to West Asia, which constitutes what we know as the Arab region. We would also like to acknowledge our OBI colleagues on our communications team and Lara Haboub on the Democracy and Belonging Forum team for their collaboration and support on this series. And we'd also like to thank the Sultan Program of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at UC Berkeley for partially funding this webinar series. And of course, we want to thank our incredible speakers and moderator for being here with us today and for participating in this event. I'd now like to invite my dear colleague and Global Justice Program Director, Al-Sadiq Al-Sheikh, who is a co-designer for this webinar series, to introduce and to provide some context to the Global South Lab, which is the container and hub for this webinar series. Hello, Al-Sadiq, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Basima. Good evening for the folks who join us from different parts of the world. My name is Al-Sadiq Al-Sheikh. I lead the Global Justice Program and also have the honor to work with Basima to co-design this webinar series, which was fantastic thus far. Very few words about our newest project, which is the Global South Lab. We at the Othering and Belonging we identify othering as one of the major problems that facing the world in the 21st century. Otherings have different manifestation and different expressions, and it seems in the last few years it sees substantial spaces among nations, between people. There's a lot of breaking, and the results of that was just heartbreaking, and we can see it. Our institute always thought that belonging is a fundamental precursor for coexistence in this world for human, non-human species and the natural world. But we also add a condition for that. We all need to belong without othering. As might seem that is extremely difficult, extremely challenging, but that's what we strive for. We have to figure out a way to build bridges, to get to know each other, in order to avoid the heartbreaking. And one of the ways in which we thought about to do our part is to create a lab, a space, at least virtually for the time being, to be able to do that work. One of the fundamental recognition that we say in the Global South Lab, that the world constitutes of this vast geography, peoples, aspirations, with different cultures, different political systems, aspirations, and hope. And we cannot even imagine a world that everyone and everything belong without including their visions, their hopes, their aspirations, their lived experience, their successes, maybe their failures. It has to be present to us. And we call this reproducing or allowing the existing knowledge to be known, because we believe that for the last over 7 to 8 decades, their knowledge and experience and visions being deliberately marginalized, deliberately being concealed, and we know nothing about it. So it will be almost impossible to build a world of belonging without actually knowing who live in our world. And the vast majority of the people of the Global South, which is constitute more than 85% of the world populations, could give us a real hope for rethinking to all of us to co-design the future, to remedy the contemporary difficulties and challenges that we face. So we know that we are not the one who will speak on behalf of the Global South, but one of our duties is to create a space, and hopefully we inspire other people as well around the globe to do so. Our goal is to reintroduce the people of the region to each other, and by doing that, to the rest of the world. The second thing, we will work tirelessly with Global South civic institutions and peoples and social actors to co-design the future's activities of the lab. And finally, the hope is just to be able, by doing the introductions and connections and knowing each other, to incubate a different type of collaboration across the world among peoples and citizens of the world. But primarily, our focus will be the people of the South, since we don't know much about them, and since some of them, they don't know even each other. So this series as a kind of a case, piloting case for that. Do the people who live in this vast region, what you call North Africa and the Middle East, or SWANA, or North Africa, East Africa, and West Asia, actually know each other's dreams, hopes, struggles, what they have in common, how they can come together. And here I have to just underscore this before I pass it back again to Basima. This is a citizens-led. It's not a state-led. So our focus is how to introduce citizen to citizens, people to people, civic institution to civic institution, social movement to social movements. And in doing so, we will definitely find out our common aspiration. Maybe that will help us to devise common strategy for combating othering, whether those othering mechanisms exist in our nations or in our regions or across the world. In doing so, maybe we will discover what the best strategy to build the infrastructure for greater belonging without othering, that inclusive for everyone and everything. I will pass it back to you, Basima. Thank you.
Thank you, Al-Sadiq. And yes, everyone, please check out the Global South Lab website. We'll be dropping a link to that. We'll have many forthcoming activities that you can participate in, and we look forward to engaging with you all through that lab. I'll also add that both the series and the lab are part of a larger effort at the Othering and Belonging Institute, which Il Sadiq shared, to create platforms where global citizens can learn from each other, contribute, and co-create common strategies that envision a future where everyone and everything belong. So in regards to this series, this 3-part public webinar series entitled Arab Women and Feminist Visions for Equity and Belonging, it focused on Arab women and feminist-led efforts and their essential roles within society, the region, and diaspora in shaping civic life and social and political progress. Women and feminists throughout the region and diaspora, representing different countries, lived experiences, struggles, and identities, have shared their knowledge and expertise in advancing social and political change, efforts toward genuine democratization, women's rights and gender justice, food sovereignty, land rights, and much more, the latter of 2 of which we're going to be getting into in today's conversation, while simultaneously centering their voices and demands for rights, equity, and justice for all. And if you missed the previous 2 webinars, we have them on our website on the Global South Lab. So if you're curious, check them out, and we'll also drop links to those in the chat as well. So this project is an invitation and an effort to center Global South perspectives and voices that are often underrepresented. And for this series in particular, we want to reflect on the priorities of Arab women and feminists and their visions, values, and strategies toward equity, justice, belonging, and world making, as well as to broaden narratives and perspectives beyond a Western narrative and public opinion pertaining to women of the region, Arab and Arabic-speaking peoples, societies, and the Arab region at large. And as I wrap up, a quick note on housekeeping. We will have 15 minutes for Q&A from the audience, our wonderful audience members. So please be thinking of your questions, dropping them in the chat. We'll be collecting them and then sharing them with the speakers. And again, we'll have about 15 minutes after the 1-hour conversation with the speakers to pose your questions. And again, thank you for joining us today. With that, I'm going to transition us to our conversation with our speakers. And unfortunately, our 3rd speaker, Abir Ibrahim, was not able to join us today. And I'm going to pass it to our moderator to introduce our other 2 speakers. And I'll start by introducing her, Leah Yamin, our moderator for today's session. It's my honor and privilege to bring you on stage and introduce you. Leah Yamin is a creative and a researcher. She is the co-director of the Center for Social Sciences Research and Action in Beirut and has established and led the interpretation of the center's scientific research, programs, and activities into various formats from an interdisciplinary perspective. She focuses on overseeing a multidisciplinary team of designers, data analysts, and digital creators to develop innovative ways to visualize and disseminate the center's data in line with its mission to make knowledge openly accessible. Her main research areas and work revolve around social security and protection, communication, visualizations, civil society, and civic space. Welcome, Leah, and thank you for leading us in our conversation today.
Thank you very much, Basima, and thank you to the entire OBI team for organizing this, for all their efforts, and for including me in this. I'm very happy to be part of this webinar. So I'll be introducing our speakers first, then I'll ask them a few questions, and then we'll open the floor, as you mentioned, Basima, for questions from the audience. Today we have with us Shireen Talat, who's a feminist movement leader, activist, economist, and documentary filmmaker dedicated to feminist climate and economic justice. She founded MENA Feminist for Economic, Ecological Justice and Development, MENAFEM, a regional network advocating for transformative policies that center women's rights, economic sovereignty, and climate resilience. And we also have with us Mona Lokman, who is currently the National Coordinator on Inclusion with the Office of the UN Special Envoy in Yemen. She is the founder of Food for Humanity and co-founder of the Women's Solidarity Network, the largest women's network in Yemen, and she is a member of the Women's Alliance for Security Leadership. Welcome to Shireen and Mona with us. Mona, our thoughts are with you and with the Yemeni people today. I believe you wanted to share a few words about that before we begin.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you for hosting this important session. It's definitely an honor to be with you today and speak about the critical issues of sustainable development, climate justice, and food sovereignty. As the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Yemen after nearly a decade of war, in the past 48 hours, Yemen has witnessed devastating regional escalation. Israeli air strikes have targeted the Houthi-controlled sites in Hodeidah and Sana'a and Amran. They have completely damaged the critical infrastructure that millions of Yemenis depend on, completely rendered the Sana'a International Airport, and now has worsened the electricity crisis as well, which means hospitals, everything is out of is completely devastated. The escalation comes in response to a Houthi missile that also attacked on Israel, dragging the Yemenis into a regional conflict they did not choose. Our hearts and thoughts are with them today, and this madness has to stop. The Houthis will not be deterred only by these airstrikes. A political and real solution to Yemen that we will speak more about later on. Thank you, Leah, for giving me the space.
Thank you, Mona, for sharing this. I'm sure we'll be touching on some of these issues during our conversation tonight or today, depending on the time zone you're joining us from. So I'll be starting with the questions, starting with Shireen. If you can tell us a bit about your journey and your life's work that intersects social justice, economic development, and environmental rights, and what led you to found MENAFEM?
Thanks a lot, Leah, and our organizers here, and thank you, Mona, for sharing what is happening in Yemen. Our hearts and minds are with our sisters and brothers there, and in Palestine, and in Sudan, and in Lebanon, and basically everywhere in the region. Well, I am Shireen Talat. I'm an economist by activism, and a filmmaker from Egypt, but I'm based in Morocco. Well, my journey started as coming from a family of activists. So we use this term that my ceiling was very low. I mean, I was there in the heart of the movement from Egypt, and I had an opportunity to know more and to explore the world through my parents' eyes. At first, I mean, like at a very young age, and all the surroundings was calling for justice and for better world and better lives for us. So there, that is where I come from. And then the major two major incidents happened in my life. The first of them was the Egyptian Revolution and the Arabic Spring. I cannot say it's completely it changed my life, but it was clear what the mission that I and the path that I can take to my life, because I didn't want to lose hope. Hope was and still my only drive to continue what is happening here, to continue this effort, if I may say. The second and the most important is having my daughter Rita, and it was clear that I don't have any other option rather than to be committed to this cause, which is simply trying to secure better life for my daughter, especially after the Egyptian revolution. My daughter is the daughter of revolution. We decided to have children because of the revolution. So because we made this decision as a family, my partner and I, So we have to be committed to provide and keep pushing for the hope for Rita to have a better life. So that's basically why I'm here. And Egyptian people, Tunisian people, most of the people in the region went out on the streets calling for عيش حرية عدالة اجتماعية, for bread, freedom and social justice. And Egypt was witnessing a very bad wave of austerity and debt, which is actually emerged more now after the revolution. And that's what led to the Egyptian revolution and other revolutions and mobilizations around the region. We cannot forget about the Bouazizi. We cannot forget about all our also friends that we lost during that period and still losing or still paying a big bill. So, and as you know, women carried the heaviest burden of debt and austerity. So it was for us a very important moment to establish MINAFEM. MINAFEM started as a mailing list with other feminist colleagues who are sharing the same يعني هم, if we may say, or the same burden. And as women, as I mentioned, carried the heaviest burdens, the austerity policies, the inflation, the subsidies cut, the job losses, and the IMF policies, of course, was in our mind and center of our mind, how we can fight back. So, and I personally worked with labor unions, with women in marginalized areas, with youth, and none of them were consulted when those policies were determining our lives. So I co-founded MINAFEM to resist those policies, and to build a feminist alternative from our region. And we focus on economic sovereignty, not survival. This is very important. We are all in the surviving mode, and that needs to end. So that's why we're working towards economic sovereignty, and women must have power over our resources and policies. Our work actually connects grassroots struggles to the global space where decision made about our lives. I mean, the decision is usually made in DC, in Brussels, not in Sana'a, not in Cairo, not in Beirut. But the topic is us. So we decided to be there. And that's why we founded MINAFEM, for economic development and ecological justice. It's, and everything for us is from the feminist perspective, from the intersectional feminist lens, on economical and ecological justice. So I hope I didn't take so much time.
Thank you, Shireen, for sharing this and for also shedding light on social justice, which was a demand across the MENA, common to all of the different countries. Muna, moving on to you. So you're a peace builder and women's rights advocate, and your advocacy work also addresses the climate crisis, water diplomacy, and security. What led you to work on these issues?
First of all, thank you, Shireen. I can relate to a lot of what you're saying, especially the part on hope. And I think I started with the hope as well. I was in the city of Taz, which was sieged by the Houthis at that time, and there were huge battlefields there. And at the same time, we had airstrikes by the Saudi-led coalition, and it was just a terrible time. My own house was hit by one of the airstrikes, and at that time, the people there, let's say the local authorities left. They left Taz, and they left Sana'a, and then they left Yemen totally. We were left at that time with no choice. I mean, really, I can say that my journey started into peace building and advocacy. It wasn't my own choice. It was a response, and I think women and youth at the front lines are there not by choice. They are there just naturally. It's their feeling of responsibility that really takes them to be at places, risking their own lives, even though they are threatened physically, either by airstrikes, bombings, and snipers, landmines. But at the same time, they choose to be with the people, and that's what I chose. And I'm grateful for that. I saw the devastating impact in the communities since 2014 when the Houthi coup started, and then that led to the coalition as well bombing Yemen. And when that happened, that meant that we had different factions of armed groups inside the cities, on top of our houses, everywhere, snipers and putting landmines and provoking each other, and so people were trapped in those areas. They were at the beginning. There were some safe spaces, and I was in one of those safe spaces, and I chose to help the people who are not in those safe spaces by providing water and food. So I think that women peace builders, and I'm part of a huge network, the Wasl Leadership for Security, which is hosted by ICANN Civil Society Network, and in that network we have tens of at least 40 to 50 countries of women peace builders and also men peace builders who support the cause from different countries. And one of the things that I noticed is a pattern between all of us is that they're the first responders. And we saw this during the pandemic as well, how these women keep transforming their role into another role to respond to another crisis within the community. So once it's food and water, another time it's bringing the community together, and that's really what I started thinking. That first of all, we had the burden of the hunger, and this displacement was huge, and at that time there was no international community in the war zones or in the conflict areas. They came very, very late, and when they did, they were in other areas, not in the areas where people really needed the help. And that meant that the local community had the access, and we started to just organize ourselves. And then I decided to found Food for Humanity. And I called it Food for Humanity for a reason. And it's a story that I always say that one of the things that really broke my heart is seeing all the young youth leaving their universities, their ambitions, their artwork. Some of them were poets, some of them were artists, and they left everything and started picking up the guns and fighting against each other. For me, at that time, I started saying, responding to the food and humanity crisis is not going to be enough. We're going to be in cycles of violence for tens of years, and here we are now. I think that that was a turning point for me when I started saying that we need to start thinking about the war in Yemen in different ways. The the social fabric is completely destroyed. And that itself is an entry point for cycles of violence. And so we started working on advocacy and then we started saying, okay, then we have another problem, which I will speak about later, but the narratives as well in mainstream media were all completely misleading, or they were completely not there. And so that led to a huge issue for Yemen, because the policymakers around the world were taking decisions on behalf of the Yemeni people with a misled story, with a missing story. The voices of the Yemenis were not reflected in the mainstream media. I decided to become a voice for the voiceless people. I started my work in international advocacy with the UN Security Council, with international bodies, think tanks, wherever I could find a space to voice the issues of the Yemenis that they were really facing. I would do that. But the issue was that the armed groups and the warlords were getting the VIP treatment around the world, and the peacemakers had suddenly become the warmongers in the mainstream media. And so we were called out for bringing the atrocities to the media, the violations, really saying what's going on in the cities. Just speaking about the siege and Taz was something that was really seen as, wow, you're not speaking about Saudi-led coalition attacks. Yes, we are. I mean, they were not throwing flowers on the Yemenis. They were also bombing Yemen. But at the same time, we had armed groups committing many crimes, such as the Houthis, and also others, but the crimes that were led by the Houthis were devastating, and nobody would listen to the local community, especially to the women. We started saying that we need to really organize ourselves. So we reinitiated a network that was established in 2013, and then we revived it around 2016. And we called it the Women Solidarity Network, because we believed and still believe that everybody, all the warring groups were are all against each other, but they all agreed to be against the women. So we had to protect ourselves, even though we really disagreed, because there was so much polarization and mobilizing by all the armed groups and the media to be on one side or the other. But we said, okay, we need to have some sort of code of ethics between us that brings us together to protect each other, even if we don't agree. And it was really difficult, but we were able to do so with my colleagues, such as Rasha Jalhoum and others, who were leading the Peace Track initiative, and through that, hosting the Women Solidarity Network. We then started saying that we need to also document the cases of women mediators on the ground, because we were calling for participation, but people really didn't know what was going on the ground. And we started bringing the faces of women who were mediating the release of detainees, who were mediating water and land disputes on the ground. And that was really something, another turning point, I think. But still, these women are excluded from the official talks. We're still working on that together. But I think the leadership of these women and the youth and some of the tribal leaders as well must be now included and supported. So I'll stop there, and then we'll speak later on.
Thank you for that, Mona. It's a great transition actually into my next question, because you spoke about like the challenges in your particular context that you operate in. I'm sure Shireen also faces similar or more specific contextual challenges, but these challenges cannot be considered in abstraction of regional and global trends. I mean, we know that the gender gap to be bridged in the region is immense. Shireen, you mentioned the need to have power over resources. Women have been excluded systematically from land ownership and Others, Munay mentioned how women and local voices are excluded from mainstream narratives and from policy making as well. Besides that, there is a resurgence of authoritarianism in the region and beyond. We see the far right taking over in many countries across the world. And on top of all that, there are the recurring conflicts and cycles of violence in our region. So what would you say are the biggest challenges? I know it's a lot, but if you can just like pick and focus on a few of the biggest challenges that you currently face in your work. Maybe you start with Shireen and then we move with Mona.
Thank you, Leah. Actually, it's a very, obvious question for a woman from the MENA region to speak about the challenges, because it's our daily life. Our daily lives actually is a big challenge. Being first being a woman under authoritarian regimes, patriarchal regimes, a woman with a voice, with a strong voice, is very hard. This is first. For me, one of the biggest challenges is the global economical system that is actually working against women in MENA. And so it's not only adding to for example, the climate crisis that we are living in, but it is deepen the problem and the challenge. For example, policies like the international financial institutions, like Bretton Woods institutions, the World Bank, and the IMF, are actually a big challenge. Debt traps, privatization, that all the policies that is undermining public services and destroy climate resilience is a big challenge. As you mentioned, Leah, women in agriculture have no land titles most of the time, no access to finance, and definitely, as always, as usual, carry unpaid care work without having access to any kind of safety or security networks and resources. The war, our region is fragmented by war, occupation, and, as I mentioned earlier, authoritarian regimes. A lot. Challenges. We can write a dictionary about the challenges that women are facing in the MENA region, and we are facing in our daily work. The system is built not pro people. The new liberal system is against people. Even trying putting different adjusting different economical bits and pieces, coming out with the trickle down economy that is that didn't work, coming out with different approaches that is not working. The system was the hidden curriculum that the system was built on, the new liberal curriculum, is against women by nature. So it is a big challenge. And as you know, all women always carry the burdens of all the crises of the world. The economical crisis women faced through their unpaid work, the care work, the being more active, or being there and creating an non-structural economic sector, and all of that. The COVID, women actually rescued the world during the COVID. طبعا without that is being mentioned in the GDP, without that being mentioned in the measures of this global economical structure, the policies that is, for example, if you uh, reviewed any kind of economical process. I'm not only speaking about the Bretton Woods institutions, but also I'm speaking about the other multilateral systems like the European, the EBRD, the European Bank for Development and Infrastructure, the EIB, etc., etc., whatever. Those system that is, for example, supposed to put the agenda of development, they forgot about women and their uh, work and the care work that they are providing. They assume that they are going to do this anyway. So they don't, we are not visible to the system. So it will remain my biggest challenge. And that being said, the donors, the funders who are we are interacting around is, for me, is not all of them, of course, but some of them are not helping a lot, because we need a structural change, not empowerment, not between between brackets empowerment. This is not what we need at this moment. We need a change in this uh, in this system, and this is not science fiction. It can happen. We can build a system, from my perspective, as a global economical system that works for women and marginalized groups, will work for everybody. That's why we're working through our feminist intersectional lens, and that can happen. Thank you. I'll leave the floor here.
Thank you, Shireen. Mona?
Shirin, that was painful to hear because, yeah, um, structural change. And yeah, I think one of the major challenges, and just adding to Shirin, that at least we felt and still feel, the challenges are immense and multi-layered, of course. So we have the operational threats, airstrikes, checkpoints, landmines, detention, kidnapping, and then you have the institutional ones. The actual collapse of state was maybe one of the hugest the challenges. The shrinking civic space that we're seeing right now, and the detention and kidnapping of civil society activists, UN staff. This has been totally terrifying, to say the least. And even those who are outside of their countries are not safe as well. The digital threats. But perhaps one of the damaging challenges that I have observed and the ongoing conflict, especially for Yemen, is the erasure of the Yemeni voices in global narratives. So you have a full panel, people speaking about your country. No one from your country is reflected in that panel, let alone women. So the mainstream media that portrays the Yemen as a hopeless humanitarian crisis, or a geopolitical chessboard, that is rarely highlighting the agency and the innovation or the leadership of the community, of the Yemenis themselves. And we saw this in the Stockholm Agreement, unfortunately, and other things that, with good intentions, perhaps, leading to what we have right now, a huge crisis and the struggle, and the complete destroying of the infrastructure in Yemen. And this is not just, it's not buildings, it's not just normal infrastructure, it's electricity, it's water, it's hospitals, it's factories, it's livelihoods, it's the economy. This is leading to starvation of the Yemeni people. The conflicting narratives, Leah, again, this is another huge challenge, and I mentioned it a little bit before. But that in itself has led to many lost opportunities, loss of momentum, decisions that have led to threatening of innocent people. Just these narratives, I think, as women peace builders, we face so many invisible threats, but at the same time, then those who are coming to help us, supposedly, are also causing an issue with this ignorance, if I may say. And I think that another issue is the international aid that continues to come into countries like Yemen, usually favor the large institutions and exclude the local, especially local Yemeni women-led organizations. This means that the funding gets into the hands of the big boys, who are able to bring in huge budgets, and usually it doesn't get to the right hands. And we are seeing now the disconnect of aid and all the issues that have happened with the disruption of aid, and the issues in many cases of aid getting in the wrong hands, getting into Hezbollah, getting into warlords' hands, while the Yemeni children are starving to death. So just to conclude, I think it's this pushing back against all of these systems is not fair for women peace builders. I mean, instead of supporting them, we're actually putting them at risk. We're threatening their lives. And all of these slogans and frameworks that we, as an international community working on, are actually putting these women at threat instead of protecting them. So the tokenization in peace processes is another issue. Women as being sidelined instead of being at the table where decisions are being made that affect their lives, their communities, and their future. So mainstream media, the narratives, the tokenization, and the physical threats, all of these combined together are only part of the challenges that we face. But at the same time, we're continuing, we're supporting each other, we're trying our best to, like the salmon fish, go against the tide, and keep the community together as much as possible. But it's getting worse by the minute, and it's spilling over. It's not just in our country, it's spilling over, and that's what we need to start thinking about: real prevention and real ending of violence from the root causes. Thank you so much.
Indeed, the challenges are immense, and it goes from the personal all the way to the regional level. I like how you echoed each other's answers a lot, especially when it comes to the need for visibility, including local voices, and shedding light on the double burden of women, but also, very interestingly, so the role of international community and the donor community in the shrinking civic spaces, and in sometimes, especially with IFIs, in breaking down social contracts, and how that all affects the operational system we operate in. So in that sense, what is the role of women leadership and civil societies in our region in reframing and reclaiming land rights, land sovereignty, and environmental justice, especially in the context of war, genocide, and the post-colonial realities we live in? I mean, today was also, especially for Yemen, a very stark reminder of this. So why does this work matter now? Maybe we also start with Shireen and then with Muna.
Well, I remember a moment when I was sitting, like maybe all of us here, in front of my TV last year, watching bombing, massacring the during the genocide in Gaza that didn't end till now. And I stopped for a moment and I said, what I'm doing, what I am doing. I'm well, during the time and before, and still, but we were heavily engaged in advocacy and changing, for example, policies like the surcharge policy of the IMF. We were leading, as Mina Fem, we were leading an international campaign to eliminate the surcharges of the IMF. We're working very active on canceling the debt, ending austerity. We founded with other colleagues the Global End Austerity Campaign, etc., etc. And I stopped. Whom I'm advocating with, not with, I'm not speaking about my colleagues. I'm speaking about whom I'm directing my diplomacy and advocating work. The same people that are killing our sisters and brothers. The system, it is the same system. So we realized that we are not going to do the work as usual anymore. Not like this. Yes, we have to be in the table, sitting on the same table. Our voices need to be more stronger, but also our alternatives and decolonizing our narrative has to be stronger and stronger, in a different way, in a different mindset. So women are not just victims. We are strategists. We are builders of resistance. And again, we have to go out from the surviving mood to the resistance mood. And part of what we are doing at Mina Fem is that, to be honest with ourselves. We support women-led cooperatives, unions, climate defenders, policy advocates, etc., etc., from the grassroots level to the international level. It cannot go only on under one level. It cannot go only on the grassroots levels without the global level. And that act needs to be in solidarity. That's why, for example, we're having the global feminist gathering here next week, to be able to think together of this global economic structure and where we are going in the time of as you mentioned, Leia, rising of the right-wing regimes, the craziness that's happening in the world, the craziness of the policies, the system that is the dead horse, dead horse. The global economical structure for us is a dead horse now. And what is our perspective and what we are going to do? And it's not new for women to be active on leadership, on feminist leadership, I mean. But now feminist leadership means redefining the world, the economics that is not only centering care work, etc., etc., but that is centering resilience and resistance and solidarity, and being involved on what all the discussions that was imposed on us, and act against all the colonial legacy that we're carrying and sharing, acting in solidarity and against the all the extracting projects and policies and systems that is still, and that is taking different shapes. And we have to be in all the spaces. We have to be active within the UN system, either UNFCCCs, or now there are the discussions on the FFD, the finance and development discussion that just that we are going to the summit that is happening in Sevilla next month, or next, yeah, July, and the WTO, the Bretton Woods institutions, etc., etc. And we we fought against eliminating the surcharges, and we won. We won. We reformed the policy, but we wasn't that happy of that reform, because this system needs more than a reform. Need to change. So I believe the feminist leadership being in the center of this change, decolonize our narrative, decolonizing our bodies, decolonizing our existence, is happening and is a must. Thank you.
Thank you, Shireen. Mana, to you, why does this work matter now?
That's difficult also. Shireen, you're making my life difficult today. Speak up to you. Very well said. For Yemeni women inside the country and in the diaspora, they are leading some of the most transformative work in peace building, justice, community resilience. We're not simply participants, we are architects of our future, the future that we want to live in. Despite the risks, violence, mobility, restrictions, exclusion, we continue to negotiate local ceasefires. There are many disputes in Yemen, so conflicts within conflicts within conflicts. The role of women here is essential, and we continue to do that in innovative ways, in our own ways, with our own funding. Sometimes we find some small funding that goes a long way, because we don't have all of those organizational funding and spending. But what we try to do is, I mean, I've seen from with my own eyes how Food for Humanity led some rebuilding of water infrastructure, and that led not only to peace within those communities, but sustained development projects where women are leading now agricultural projects, just because these people came in together, women and youth from the inside, from diaspora, and they contributed financially and strategically to rebuild these stations and support the communities, and that led to a holistic approach to peace building. But it's not a peace agreement. It's not the old school way of doing peace building, and that's what I'm advocating for with my colleagues. And I'm happy that at least the UN is now listening more to grassroots on the ground. The approach of a bottom-up approach, listening to the local communities, is essential for lasting peace. And I think that in itself is very important. Networks like the Women's Solidarity Network and other networks in Yemen have been able to provide tools and roadmaps, such as the Feminist Roadmap for Peace, and other declaration for transitional justice, and these efforts, bringing them to the global platforms, has really helped us in moving the needle a little bit, changing some of the narratives, amplifying the voices of Yemeni communities who have been left out of diplomatic spaces. We're trying now to bring back the decision making to our country, to the communities. It's getting more difficult, but at the same time, I'm glad that some of the narratives that we have been working on for years, finally, perhaps when some of the warring parties have disrupted such as the Houthis in the Red Sea, at least it brought attention to the atrocities of the Houthis that we've been speaking about for years, and nobody was listening to us, or perhaps they were ignoring what we were saying, and so I think that in itself is giving more, I would say, just recognizing the agency of the women and the youth and the tribes in Yemen. I think that in itself is a huge step forward, despite all the destruction that is happening. I think that is really important. Even when our expertise is recognized, it's still treated as symbolic. And so, is the international community really serious about peace building and prevention and protection? I think after all of these years after 25 years of 1325, Beijing platform, everything that we have been listening to for so many years, and still, if a woman is deeply threatened, we cannot relocate her, we cannot provide any funding for her relocation or legal needs. I think these are questions that we need to start really thinking about and providing resources for, because the old school way of having an agreement, two battlefields, two warring parties, a shaking of hands, and they go home, the next day they fight again. This is not bringing peace to our communities, and it's actually causing more disruption. We still need the warlords at the tables, but we definitely need the communities to lead a citizen approach to peace building and protection. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, so if we try to think about ways to break through these systems and to reclaim agency and reimpose our own narratives, I'd like to hear from you what are the opportunities in building solidarity links across the region and working together, bridging between the African and the Arab world and beyond, building links with the global South in general. How can that help us in achieving wins, quote unquote? Maybe this time we'll start with Mona من غير شوية, and then we'll move to Shireen.
I didn't hear the last part of the question earlier.
Yes, how can building solidarity links across the global South help us in achieving breakthroughs and wins, so to speak?
I think that across the MENA region, for instance, the larger geopolitical game is framing women as either victims or just like part of the victims of the larger geopolitical game. I think that realizing that the feminist resilience and strategic work of women from Sudan to Palestine, Lebanon to Iraq, everywhere, you will see that they are not isolated struggles. They're part of a fabric of resistance. And I think reimagining the work of these women has to be rooted in the pursuit of justice and peace building. The solidarity that I have personally seen between across the region has definitely helped me, and across the global South, not just across the MENA region. And I think that that solidarity brought people like me alive again at a time when I was at despair. Nobody knew what I was doing on the ground. I was not funded. I was not even recognized. And I think organizations and networks such as Madre, ICANN, and others were able to lift us up and bring us together with other networks who were doing similar work. These movements are trusted within their communities, and they're not just only heard, but they are supported by the local community. And one of the things that I've noticed, even though for Yemen, for instance, we have a patriarchal society, a tribal society, a community which is quite conservative, but still we are highly respected. And that has helped me and other women mediators to be able to have access within the tribes, access within the villages, because we are respected. And I think bringing that back together after conflict is now a challenge, because now the warlords have crossed most of the red lines, and they have committed atrocities that have left the women at threat. This was something that we did not have, for instance, for Yemen. Now, going back to your question, the solidarity is hugely important. First of all, the exchange that we have, the learning exchange, the experiences that we share together, the grievances that we share together as well. It's really important to build upon that and continue to work in solidarity as networks. I think the movements of networks have had a huge impact, especially over the past few years after the pandemic. I think there has been a growing movement of exchanging and supporting each other and expanding the work of country-led women networks into a more global, first of all, a regional and then a global network. That in itself has had a lot of impact. It's amplified our voices. It's brought attention to the causes of each country. For instance, Yemen itself was very isolated, like I said before, and bringing attention through these networks. So, for instance, a colleague in Iraq is speaking about Yemen, and I'm speaking about Iraq, and it really, I think, supported our causes. And I think the major challenge with these networks is that we are still seen in a way that with a politicized eye. I think that's something that is affecting these networks from getting funding as well. And we need to start rethinking how these networks can really be supported and institutionalized. But yeah, I will stop there, and I think that my gratitude for really amplifying my voice has been through women networks in the global south, yeah, and internationally. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mona. Shireen, how do you feel that solidarity links across the South can help us achieve these wins?
Well, I'm coming from there, actually. I'm coming from there. Yani, leading international campaigns definitely wouldn't work without solidarity from first our South solidarity, but also on the global level. We had big solidarity from our also northern colleagues. But your question was also around building solidarity within the Arab region or the African region, the MENA region, with also the South in terms of Africa. And as a proud African woman, I can say from here the world starts, and from here the world will be recreated. And we're not only sharing identities and bloods, but we're sharing history of colonialization. And now we're sharing also a huge burden of debt dependency, imposed economics models. We're sharing everything. We might facing different contexts, like in Egypt, in Yemen, in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Sudan, in Ghana, in South Africa, in Nigeria, but we are under the same system. we're fighting the same system. So solidarity is not, of course, amplifying voice is very important, but it's not a charity. It's about co-strategizing together, shared action, collective learning, and many other that I believe that it is already happening. We saw this in different campaigns. I mean, I'm also part of the Climate Action Network board, international board, and we see how the acting and solidarity on the climate space in relation to the economical justice field is trying to evolve more. We on a regional level, I believe, Leah, you can speak and write chapters about it as well. Youth women across and workers and women across the borders can create a south movement of justice on a solidarity base, and it's very important. And I believe the feminist movement is, well, feminism, as we all know, as an ideology, is about justice. It's about social justice. The core of feminism is solidarity, if I may say. We just need to focus on this to be able to fight together for sovereignty, not competition, not competing with each other. And I believe that's it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for reframing this in the sense of working together, not charity, not competition, because really it would be for a common goal as we are facing the same challenges under the same system, as you have so rightfully said as well. I think we have time now for questions from the audience, and we already have a few. I'll start with El Sadiq's question because it flows with what we were discussing. So it's right there on the screen, but if you can each speak about your work beyond the region and across the South. Whoever wants to start, go ahead.
If you want me to start, because maybe Minafem works from the local, regional, the local level, from the local to global, the local, regional to global level, and I believe maybe the surcharge campaign, and I can share more. There's a lot on surcharges on our website, and I can share more on this later. Maybe our organizers can share with the audience here on specifically the surcharge campaign, because it had many different levels, that the starting from the local level to the regional level. We worked together across, it was a cross-regional campaign, to be able to identify what is this injustice policy that is imposed on Jordan, Tunisia, Egypt, many other countries in Africa, like Kenya, for example. And we maybe all saw the uprising in Kenya last year, and different countries in Latin America, like Argentina. We actually had in our campaign different economists, but also different activists from the ground, yani, like myself, but we also had Stiglitz in the campaign. The Pop were there supporting eliminating surcharges during that time. So it was a big cross-regional campaign. I mean, again, build on eliminating unjust policy like surcharges, but also build on solidarity. So and also if I may mention the global end austerity campaign, which started during the COVID with 11 of us sitting with the MG of the IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, by that time, and coming out from this meeting with determination that we have to work against austerity collectively as a worldwide campaign. And now we're having different hubs in the campaign after years of struggling. We have the MENA hub led by MENA Fem. We have the Latin hub led by Latin Dad, and we have the Asia hub, etc. So I hope that I answered the question. Thank you.
No, it was very on point in answering the question. Mona, would you like to share some of your work beyond the region and across the South?
Yeah, definitely. I think that my work, although it's rooted in Yemen and the Arab region, but especially my focus on climate security, security sector reform as well, that I've led many of the security dialogues on Yemen and some other countries, has really brought me into different places such as also Asia and Latin America, especially with Madre and ICANN. We've been working a lot on South-South learning exchanges, joint initiatives that we've done also on water, and in some countries such as Cameroon and also actually in Kenya and Somalia. We've learned a lot from them on their water, and they've learned a lot from implementing water projects. And they've learned a lot from the holistic approaches that we were taking. So I think that's one of the things that I can now remember, but also many other partnerships, global networks that we've been working with, such as the Mediterranean Network, the Foreign Commonwealth Network for Peace Mediators, nearly all of the peace mediation networks I've been either hosted by or been working with. And I think that has really led to, even for policymakers, going back to the other question that we had on women solidarity networks or women networks, I think these collaborations started really making a change in what do these networks actually provide and how powerful can they become. And I keep going back to the pandemic because that was the time when we really were able to transform many of the narratives about women, when people were saying, why do we need the women at the table? I mean, it's participation, we need the people who actually have the guns. But during the pandemic, everybody was stuck and nobody was able to access those communities, and peace agreements just collapsed. And it was through those networks where we were able to showcase the real work of grassroots organizations. So I'm very grateful for that. The list goes on, so I can't mention all of them, but these were the major hubs or networks that I was part of. And especially through the ICANN WASL network, we really were able to have weekly meetings together. And through these weekly meetings, we even brought the UN Security Council to one of our meetings to listen to the peace builders from around the world. And I think that was really effective and powerful in showcasing what these women are actually doing. So I'm grateful for all of these networks who have been supporting us over the years.
Thank you, Mana, for that. I think it really shows how we're able to bridge from grassroots to international through solidarity work and through shared and collective work. I think we have time for just one more question from the audience, but maybe we'll keep our answers short just so that we don't go over time. So the question is from Samir. who says that the challenges are stacked against women, especially with patriarchy being a huge stumbling block. So is your work changing minds of men who didn't consider women as equal? Maybe we start with women, then
I can
with
take it.
Shireen, but yeah, like 2-3 minutes, not more, just so that we don't go over time.
Sure.
Can I
Go
just
ahead.
add a small thing for the past questions, not because I don't know how it slipped our mind, because maybe it's already huge what is happening everywhere, like what is happening in Yemen today. But I mean, the acting of solidarity on a cross-regional level and from the regional to global, if you took your mobile and checked what is the working groups that you're in, you will find definitely a working groups on Palestine, Gaza support, etc., etc. I mean, the one of the only benefits of what is still happening in Palestine till now is the huge movement that was created during the time, and we were all, and thank God we were there together, and we were here for each other, uh, on a regional level, on a south level, on a global level, to strategize, to do movements. I mean, I remember last year I was part of the COP, Civil Society Coalition. We were in the steering committee, and we were just pushing forward to turn it to a Palestine COP. So I just wanted to put this on the floor because it's very important to be mentioned. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mona, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shireen. Indeed, it is important to shed light on that. Mona, maybe quickly answering Samir's question.
Yes. Thank you, Samir, for asking this question, because it gives me an opportunity to also showcase how what people actually expect from the Yemeni community is that it's patriarchal, it's tribal, it's all against women, and we're all wearing the niqabs, and all respect to those who do. But we're just offended and yes, it is there, but changing the mindset was the most challenging, I think, of all the challenges. Yet the transformative aspect of our work has affected this. How? For instance, the generational norms and traditions in Yemen are very conservative. Not in all parts of Yemen. The south is different to the north, but we found that not only advocacy in itself sometimes caused harm, especially when you have the words like gender and all that. People are against these things because they expect it to be something different. We found that actually working with the local community leaders, such as on projects mediating local conflicts or water disputes or things like that, reflect to the men that these women need to be participating because they're benefiting the community. So I think rebuilding the community and showcasing the work and having tangible benefits for the women's inclusion or the women's work brings a shift in the perspectives of men. And actually, I've seen through these community initiatives, I've seen men allies now. But now they are convinced because they've actually seen how these women, when they participate, they actually bring benefits, resolving the disputes, food security, water security, reducing and de-escalating violence. And so when they actually see this, they become the allies. But just advocacy is not enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mana. Shireen, maybe a few words to answer the question of how your work is changing the minds of men who didn't consider women as equal.
I mean, come on, Samir. I mean, didn't what we were speaking about at the beginning of this session answer your questions, of course, I mean, the neoliberal system, the capitalistic system, is a patriarchal system, and challenging the system and changing it to a green, global, just feminist system is our aim, and it is our fight. And I believe women in our region, uh, although they are facing a lot of oppression because of this patriarchal system, but they are actually naturally fighters and leaders. And if you don't remember, or if maybe we not all remember this, but it is in the heart of my mind when this question comes. I remember the song Kendeka. It's not the song, it was a chant during the Sudanese revolution. uh, um I mean, like, if we have time, maybe we can put the lyrics, but it is speaking about how women are leading the resistance, and still will be leading the resistance. My mother, my grandmother, and hopefully my daughter will continue this resistance against the patriarchal system. So thank you.
Thank you, Shireen. And I believe this is a great time to wrap up this webinar that reminds us how women leadership and feminism can help us challenge this overall system that we're fighting against, and can help us reclaim our agency and our rights when it comes to land sovereignty, environmental justice, but also every aspect in our personal lives and in our national contexts, so that we're able to bridge from the local all the way to the international. I'd like to thank you all for this, and I think Basima will be closing now.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Muna, Shireen, Leah, for this wonderful and rich conversation. I appreciated how thorough you were in your responses and how you were really able to dig into the context of the region and the struggles that you're a part of and champion, and naming truly the many layers of complexity and challenges in the region, from war, occupation, patriarchal and authoritarian regimes, the narratives of the West that depict the region, the need for structural change, not simply empowerment, that you face in doing this work and in the region at large, and that many women face in their lives in general. And yet, despite these challenges, as you both mentioned and shared and really uplifted and embodied, women are builders of resistance and strategists, architects of their own future and of their country's future, and are championing policies and leading movements and networks throughout the region that connect the local and the grassroots to the international level to advance political, social, climate, economic justice, and peace building in the region. So thank you for your incredible work and leadership. It was an honor to have you here today in conversation and sharing your knowledge and experiences and the work that you do. And that concludes the Arab Women Feminist Visions for Equity and Belonging webinar series. Thank you everyone for joining us today. The recording of this webinar will be available at the Othering and Belonging Institute's website on the Global South Lab site. It can be accessed there. And of course, we invite you to stay in touch and to check out the lab's forthcoming projects and updates and events. It'll all be published there. And again, thank you for joining us.